Wow, what an experience this has been so far. And one of the huge surprises for me has been just how much hatred that these things without engines get thrown at them from all corners of the world. But I do wonder about those folk that shout so strongly about these cars. Are they the kind of folk that perhaps say they like Jimi Hendrix but couldn't name a single one of his tracks? Indeed, Purple Rain was a brilliant song. Yeah, I know, give me Prince over Jimmy any day of the week, and you can fight that one out in the comments. Those people that say McLaren are unreliable from their armchairs, having never even owned one. You know, the kind of person that might drive around in a BMW 135i, Instagram sticker on the back, the kind of person that will call you a sheep for getting into an EV. There they are in their cap, their beard, their skin-tight tracksuit bottoms. Who's the sheep now, right? We know the type. But an EV is not my only car. Indeed, if it was going to be my only car, I'm not so sure it would be an EV. I have 24 combustion cylinders spread around other vehicles to my name, and I absolutely love them. And I would say I'm probably better qualified to comment on EVs, whether they're any good, than somebody who's never even owned one and just points and jeers from the sidelines. In this video, I want to discuss my ownership experience, why I bought an EV, and indeed if I regret it. We're not going to touch on the EV market and on depreciation, because quite frankly that has been done to death, and yes, it is a little bit boring. We're just going to talk about my experience and why I think they might get some of the hatred leveled at them. One of the things that you hear all too often leveled at EVs, indeed it came from Mr. Rowan Atkinson himself as well, a massive petrol head who has indeed owned the most hallowed of all cars ever made, the McLaren F1, the mighty McLaren F1. Yeah, one day maybe. What an awesome car. But the comment is that EVs have no soul. An appliance on wheels, mobile phone on wheels, a washing machine that you can drive around in, that they've got no soul, right? You hear that all the time, but is it true? Well, what is soul? Soul needs some definition, right? And I'm sure different people would say soul is a different thing to them, but what is soul? Well, really, I guess it's an engine and character, right? And EVs don't really have that. But do I care that this car has no soul? I think it does have a bit of soul, but I don't care if my car has got soul when I'm sat on the A329M in traffic on a January morning. I don't care if my car's got soul when I want to pull out into an almost non-existent gap on a roundabout safely and securely. I just don't always want a car that's got soul. Sometimes I want a car that's comfortable, that makes sense, that's going to get me from A to B in a way that I want, right? And this car, the Taycan, does that brilliantly. This whole soul thing, it's a funny one for me. You know, I can't imagine that people are going to stay around on ICE cars forever. So at some point they're going to have to embrace technology, new technology, whatever that may be, if it's EVs or some other new thing comes along, which it may well do. Don't forget, these are still pretty early days, right? But those folk that might say,
oh, do you know what? I don't ever see myself getting a mobile phone because I really like the way that the voice sounds on an analog line.
That's the thing, right? People have to get on board eventually. And this comes back to my point about having it as a choice. Indeed, I do know a lot of petrol heads, self-confessed petrol heads, that also have an EV, but they wouldn't be willing to let their petrol cars go unless it was something that is forced upon them. Enjoy them while you can. I'm very much in the same boat. I am going to be enjoying my petrol cars and my diesel car for as long as I can, because it is a nice way of getting around. It's a way in which I'm used to getting around. And I was chatting with Hannah about this, and she was saying, is the Taycan, is it a car that you want to go out for a drive in as much as the McLaren? And that is the thing. I don't think it is. I don't find myself wanting to go out for a drive in the Taycan just for the fun of it as much as I would have done in my McLaren, because that whole thing was very exciting and there was a lot of theatre and it was a real buzz. This car is a kind of buzz, but in a very different way. Do I regret having bought this? No, I don't at all. I think Porsche have captured the spirit of a car brilliantly in this platform. The power figures alone were what kind of drew me to wanting to try it, and when I did try it, it drove way better than I ever could have imagined a car like this to drive, especially given its weight. It does things that a car of this size should simply not do. It corners like a car of this size simply should not do. Right now we're on some twisties in Sport Plus, and it just sticks to the road like glue. It is a brilliant drive, but it does so almost stealthy ninja quietly without even batting an eyelid. It's almost ghost-like the way it moves up the road. And you hear people say that about these cars that it's not shouty enough, it's not loud enough, it's too understated for a Porsche. I love the way these cars look. I think they're understated. They float up the road gracefully, beautifully almost. Really nice looking cars that don't scream, look at me, I'm here, pay me attention. That's what Instagram's all about, isn't it? For me, it's really very good at what it does. Now, have I loved the ownership experience? Almost. I really have. There's loads of great things about this car that I enjoy. As I say, sometimes you've got to travel to places not because you want to, but because you have to. You've got to do journeys that you have to. You don't necessarily want to. So for me, this car is really good at those times. It's safe, it's got adaptive cruise control, all of the really cool stuff. It just makes journeys that you've got to do in traffic, dull, boring journeys that just are a bit tedious, it really makes those journeys brilliant. I cannot stress that enough. It is quiet, it is pleasant, it is peaceful, it is relaxing. It's almost like you weren't even driving, you were just sat in a lovely surround, enjoying as best you can the location you're at the time, be it the A329M on that rainy morning. Some of the things I haven't enjoyed about EV ownership experience, and it's not unique to the Taycan, is things like the charging infrastructure, which continues to suck in the UK, and having to spend time waiting for these cars to charge up, especially on a tractor. I wish more tracks had rapid chargers so that you could enjoy these things a little bit more. There is kind of a big spectre hanging over EVs, and I've heard this term a few times now, levelled at this car as well, is that an EV car is effectively a disposable car. And you kind of look at that word applied to this car and you think, you know what? It's not really that far from the truth. Why is it a disposable car? Well, because at some point in this car's life, the battery will have degraded so much that it will become unusable as a car to get you from A to B, you know, maybe 50% capacity, 60% capacity of the battery. It's already a low range and it's going to need replaced. That battery will need replaced, and it needs replaced at significant cost. £50,000 there or thereabouts, I'm told. It might come down, might go up, who knows? But that's just the thing. It's something that you're going to have to do. And people say, well, a new engine costs 60 grand in a Merc C63S, for example. Yes, it does. but it's probably not something you're going to have to do in the lifetime of the car. Don't forget I have an SL55, a V8, 21 years old. That engine is still going beautifully and will continue to do so if I look after it for another 10, maybe 20 years, easily. You simply wouldn't get that out of a well-used EV. And that's not good for EVs on the whole, that fact that you've got to replace the battery. And that is the thing that I would potentially regret most if I'd bought it outright. Luckily, I didn't. But the ownership experience and the enjoyment of this car on the PCP that it's on has been absolutely brilliant. And I can't fault it, really, apart from the charging experience. It's been a little bit more unreliable than perhaps it should have been in places, but generally not too bad. And it is a great car to drive in. So, to all those EV haters out there, I would say there's a point when you're going to have to probably end up driving one yourself, and then we'll be laughing at you. But it might not. There might be some new technology that comes along. The ICE ban might get pushed further out. Who knows what comes in the future of car ownership? But it's certainly an interesting place to be. And do I regret buying this car? Absolutely not. Would it put me off buying another one? Absolutely not. That's it for this one. Do stay safe, stay well. See you on the next one. Bye for now.